Well, good evening, Lamb fanatics. Tonight we get to penetrate Rail's tough, streetwise exterior and start to follow him through the first layer of his introspective journey via Genesis' first experiment with aggressive pre-punk melodies. And rarely had Genesis sounded so gritty in their musical compositions before. Now, once again, I defer to my friend, author Kevin Holm Hudson, agreeing wholeheartedly with his supposition in this extraordinary departure from Genesis' well-established English art rock stance. Now, reading from his book, I quote, "The second album side of The Lamb begins with an extended flashback in the storyline, consisting of Back in New York City, Hairless Heart, Counting Out Time. This flashback sequence occurs as Rail's response to the fear, trauma, and confusion experienced in the cage and the grand parade of lifeless packaging. Note Rutherford's heartbeat-like bass line at the onset of this song, much like its counterpart in the cage." Rail copes through nostalgia because he's struggling to keep self-control. He's recalling the power and aggression of his street gang life back in New York City. For Genesis fans, the lyrics and Gabriel's appearing so macho and contentious in this new character was really a harsh jolt of reality. If Genesis could earlier be accused of having fey or twee lyrics, says Holm Hudson, there is nothing fey about such lines as "I'm not full of shit," which Gabriel spat out with all the venom of a proto-punk rocker. Well, more than any other song on the album, Back in New York City is the one which stands as the best example of Gabriel's desire with the Lamb to throw away all that intellectual stuff and replace it with an aggressive, ballsy character in Rail, someone, quote-unquote, who meant something to people who were not necessarily from a middle-class background. Well, since many of you have no doubt watched the 8mm Burn Switzerland YouTube clip of Peter as Rail performing this song in his black leather jacket and blue jeans, you can attest to the fact that Back in New York City is a song that seethes with violence, where Gabriel would actually throw a Molotov cocktail on stage. Well, by remembering and reliving this act, the character Rail asserts his machismo despite everything he's gone through, presenting himself as the ultimate badass one final time as a futile attempt at self-protection. But his audience knows just how fragile he really is. Gabriel's dramatic vocal performance on stage and in the studio is an impressive highlight in this brilliant menagerie of pedal point grooves set over an asymmetrical meter. And as for the archive release of 1998, despite forcing the 45-year-old Gabriel to power up to the highest peaks of his more mature vocal range to meet the key used by his 25-year-old self, except in two unusual spots in the middle of the song that we'll go over, it is still an enjoyable number in the fully retracked version. So let's progress with the side-by-side comparison.
they hurt me. Held my heart deep in the air. Shake it off, it off. No time for romantic escape. Go on, tell me how you really feel. No time for romantic escape. Tell me how you really feel. No time for romantic escape. Tell me how you
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there, because at this point in the song, Rail realizes that his tough exterior is no longer going to protect him, that his conscience is telling him that he must divest or shed this in order to progress to the higher level of consciousness within his new reality. He fights it with the next section. I'm going to play the old first. Alright, now listen carefully to the corresponding retract line on the archive release.
You're sitting in your comfort. You don't believe I'm real. You cannot buy protection from the way that I feel.
Well, Peter had to drop down a full octave for this and an upcoming line, even though the rest of the song is also retracked. Now, either he couldn't make those high notes that he had had trouble with even back in 1975, he ended up screaming them, or he's making a statement about something. Here's the old again, and this is the next line. Okay, and here is the retract version. Take a listen and very carefully to his words.
You're progressive hypocrites, hand out their trash. It was mine in the first place, so I burned it to ash.
Okay, I know that some of you would argue with me that it was a simple case of Peter not being able to reach the high notes before. But, as you know, I always try to keep my mind open and sharp enough to pick up on Gabriel's use of metaphors, both in his lyrics and in his real-world studios. Now, if you listen to him saying, "You're progressive hypocrites" in the original key, which, by the way, is the English term for political liberals in Great Britain, hardly something Rail would be saying coming from New York City. And then dropping down to the obvious 45-year-old Gabriel, not Rail the character, singing in an octave lower, "But it was mine in the first place." Now, I don't know about you, but that phrase coming from this mouth is something to pay attention to, because he's singing The Lamb for the first time in 20 years after its original release, and that speaks volumes to me as a fervent Peter Gabriel fan. Now, in my humble and not always correct opinion, I think Peter took the opportunity to reclaim what was his character, his concept, and his story, doing this particular retracking his way for the archive release and reclaiming The Lamb. Now, why not make that statement? The artist lays claim to his original work, but again, that's just my opinion. So let's proceed with the portion of the song which leads up to Rail's final attempt to connect to his manhood through memory before his hairy heart is shaved clean, ready for rebirth.
And I tasted all the strongest meats and all the sweet. Laid them down
Gabriel actually hit some pretty high notes throughout that song, which made those two sections pretty suspect to me. Well, Gabriel has been quoted that his ability to convey emotion in his words and his vocalizations is the key to properly portraying the meaning of the works like The Lamb. Well, thanks to Tony Banks, Phil Collins, Steve Hackett, and Mike Rutherford, The Lamb was not just progressive rock. It was a superb fusion of rock, punk, pop, and electronics. But the overlay of Gabriel's wide array of emotions and feelings like sex, aggression, fear, alienation, insecurity, hope, death, rebirth made it one of the most unique musical experiences ever to broach the rock and roll industry. It certainly was not constructed for the masses. It's a cerebral approach to the examination of a streetwise character who could be around any of us, but with much deeper levels of metaphorical context and societal meaning. It's a puzzle within a puzzle, written by a gifted 24-year-old supported by 4 other extremely talented 20-somethings, which 35 years later still captures our extreme curiosity and imagination. And that right there says all that needs to be said. Well, thank you for joining me and supporting this series. Good night.